One of the reasons, of course, why the government can't enact austerity is because what was called austerity for over the past decade wasn't really austerity at all. But it has such negative connotations now that the government is stuck and it can't cut spending even if it wanted to.
Well, this is the great paradox, isn't it? That Labour voters have spent the last 10 years telling us how terrible austerity is going to be and are now fully behind something, an economic programme which will end in an emergency budget, which, if the government does go down the austerity route, which people seem to think that it has a proclivity for, it's going to be far, far worse than anything that they've experienced so far. And yet they seem happy about that. It seems very odd to me.
Do you think that the virus will become a scapegoat for attempting to keep Britain aligned with the EU for as long as possible?
Possibly not, actually. I think that Boris Johnson, by and large, is much more willing to leave the EU without any specified terms, is much more likely, I think, to leave without a deal than maybe Theresa May might have been. And I think that actually this virus might give the government an excuse to do it purely because the economic fallout, if there would be any, from leaving the EU without a deal, which there might be some disruption, certainly, and it could potentially, depending on government policy, be quite bad, that the government can hide that by blaming it on the virus. And so I think actually if Johnson does have, as I suspect, much more of a spine with regards to leaving the EU, then he will use this virus as a way to avoid the kind of economic scrutiny that would have come inevitably from a no-deal Brexit. And I personally, I would say as a caveat, I don't believe that no-deal Brexit would have been economically devastating. And I think the country was already in a position with regards to its finances, with regards to keeping inflation under check, with things like money printing, with overspending, with high taxes. It was already in a precarious position, as it were. And I think that Brexit would have been blamed for what was an impending crash anyway. But I think that actually the government can now use this virus to get away from that criticism, to say, well, it's not Brexit that caused it, it's the virus. So it's actually worked out nicely for Brexiteers, I think.
Well, that's it for this episode of the Libertarian Listener, and I'll be seeing you for the next edition of the Libertarian Listener very soon.